Hi, guys. Welcome back. We've been talking about the armor of God from Ephesians 6, and today we're going to continue on in that vein. So, Ephesians 6, verse 16 says, "In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish the flaming darts of the evil one." The shield of faith. So, we're going to unpack those words a little bit today. A shield, is for protection, and this verse tells us that what we need protection from are the flaming darts of the evil one. So we know that the enemy seeks to devour, right? Like a roaring lion, stalking its prey, prowling through the earth. So we want to be protected from that. Well, a shield in times of battle is something that you hold on your arm, typically made of metal. And there are a couple of things that we could note about it. Number one, nothing can get through it, right? The purpose of a shield is that it blocks everything. It blocks a sword, it blocks a spear, it might even block an arrow, hopefully. And the second thing is that a shield bears the mark of whoever it is that you're serving. So it's going to have the insignia or the colors of your king, the design of the kingdom that you're serving. So number one, a shield is impenetrable. It's protection against anything. And number two, it bears the mark of the one that you're serving. So we're talking about the shield of faith in the Bible. And we know from the videos we've been watching that God's armor is not something physical that you can see. So we want to know, well, what does that mean for us? When we get up in the morning, how do we put on the shield of faith? Well, the key there is faith. We need to be thinking about what faith is. So Romans 10:17 tells us that faith comes from hearing, and hearing comes through the word of Christ or the word of God. So part of faith is the word of God or the word of Christ, hearing the gospel and believing it. Hebrews 2:4 tells us that the righteous shall live by faith. So faith is a way that we want to live, trusting God. Matthew 17 tells us that if our faith is as small as a mustard seed, God can take it and multiply it into something enormous. We know that mustard plants grow into something huge. And Acts 26:18 tells us that we're sanctified by faith. Sanctified means made holy, made to be like God. So faith is the way that we become more like God. And then Romans 1:17 repeats that the righteous shall live by faith. It's important because it's in the Bible multiple times. And then 1 Corinthians 2:5 tells us that our faith rests in the power of God. So faith is having trust then in God's power, in what God is doing in us and in our lives and in the world around us. And isn't that such a comfort when things get to be a little bit crazy or hectic, that our faith doesn't rest in our politicians, it doesn't rest in our government, but it rests in the power of God, what he's doing in us as believers and what he's doing in the world around us. Hebrews 11:1, I want to read a little bit for you because it unpacks what faith is even more. So Hebrews chapter 11 tells us faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not yet seen. For by it, people of old, so by faith, people of old received their commendation. By faith, we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. So by faith, we trust that God created the whole world around us. By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain. And this chapter is interesting because it goes through a whole bunch of our familiar Bible stories and tells us these were all great acts of faith. So what does faith look like? Well, we can look at all of our Bible stories. You can remember back to some of the heroes of faith that we talked about. And that's what faith looks like. So getting up in the morning and putting on this shield of faith, it's going to look like an action. It's going to look like taking steps of faith, believing God in hard circumstances, and walking forward in that, continuing to do what we know God's called us to do, trusting God with the outcome. That's faith. So by faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteousness. God commending him by accepting his gifts. And through his faith, he died. He still speaks. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death, and he was not found because God had taken him. Now, before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please him. Impossible to please God without faith. So this shield of faith is really key to living a life that honors God. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, so Noah didn't know that the flood was coming. He hadn't seen it. There were no signs. In reverent fear, constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By faith, he built the ark, even though there was not a drop of rain yet. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he received as an inheritance. God said, Abraham, take your family and your household and go. And Abraham got up and went to receive the promised land, not knowing where he was going. By faith, Sarah, Abraham's wife, herself received power to conceive even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. So Sarah trusted God, considered God to be faithful in his promise. And because of that, Sarah gave birth to a son. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son, even though biologically her body was no longer able to do that. Or she was past the age. So all of these people in Hebrews chapter 1 are people who followed God in faith. And as a result, we see that God did great things through them. So as we're thinking about this shield of faith, we know that putting on faith, trusting God, is what protects us as we go out into the world in our everyday lives, wherever we are, at home or at school or at the store or even at church. We want to be putting on that shield of faith so that we're trusting God and we're doing the things that he's called us to do. And the second part of that is I told you that a shield can have the mark of who it is that we're serving. Well, our faith is a testimony to the people around us, the people that we come in contact with, our friends and our neighbors and our classmates and our teachers and whoever it is that we're coming in contact with. They're seeing this shield of faith that we're carrying. They're seeing the way that we act and the way that we think and the way that we make our decisions, and they're realizing that we trust God, right? They're seeing that in us. So even just this shield of faith, the way that we live and the way that we act, because of our trust in God, because of our faith in God, is a testimony to the people around us. So I want to leave you with that today. And how can you be putting on your shield of faith? What do you need to do to trust God today that he's going to use you and he's going to do great things through you because of your faith in him? All right, I hope you enjoy our video and God bless.